Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This review for Justified, Season 6, Episode 8, Dark as a Dungeon, and again, guys, another fantastic episode. By the way, guys, don't ask why my hair looks weird or why I have this pin. As I said, I'm in my school musical, it's Tech Week, and this is promoting the show, and this is because when you're in a show, you have to change your hairstyle a little bit. This is all gelled right now, that's why this is sticking up. Don't ask why. Just don't ask why. I'm just gonna tell you guys, the next two videos are I'm gonna look weird. Okay, I'm gonna look weird and just accept it. Okay, it's the musical is The Wedding Singer. It takes place in the 80s, and that's why my hair looks weird. But let's just get into this episode. Because overall, guys, I really enjoyed this episode. Now, it definitely was not as good as last week's. I enjoyed last week's a lot more. And I have to say, I didn't find this to be the most interesting episode, but it definitely was a great episode as usual. I just didn't find it to be as interesting as some of the other ones. But let's just get into it because some pretty big things happened in this episode, and I definitely really enjoyed it. So we see Raylan, he takes out the trash and drinks some whiskey. He's at his dad's place cleaning up, and he cracks open his dad's army foot locker, because if you remember, he was trying to find a grave for Arlo. He was trying to find a way to bury Arlo, and he looks at photos from Vietnam and then a machine, and he finds his dad's dog tags there. And he takes outside, dumps whiskey on the lot, and sets it on fire, and it just says, "Goodbye, Arlo." That's all it says. And basically, I thought that was a good way to start the episode. He pulls the key off the dog tags, throws them in two, and he pockets the key. So he's now done what he wants to do. He's, basically honored his father's legacy, and I thought that was really good. So Boyd and Ava show up at the mine. I'm going to be honest, I did not know what was going to happen between them in this episode. I mean, especially what happened to them in the last week's episode, I had no idea where they were really heading with this whole reveal. Now that Boyd knew what would happen, I didn't know what was going to happen here. And not much really changes, but I think it's just because it's Justified such a slow-paced show that's why not really much changed in this episode. So Boy and Ava show up at the mine, and Carl says Zachariah is still in the mine and wants him to come right down to see what happened, and Boyd sends Ava home with Earl, and he tells Ava to look around and see what she wants to take with her. And she reminds Boyd that she still has her phone, and he says this is the only pipeline to Raylan, and they have to use it wisely and in concert with each other. And she asks if she trusts him, then he keeps it, and he tells Earl not to let her out of his sight. And when he said that, I'm like, you know what? I think that he's going to use Raylan. And I predicted this, that he was going to use Raylan to his advantage. Knowing this secret, I think Boyd, as I said, is going to try to use Raylan. It's not going to work, but this is Boyd we're talking about. He's going to try to use Raylan. So basically, we then see Raylan meets with a mortician about his parents that are buried on the property, and he's talking about moving their remains, because that's, of course, what he wants to do. And the mortician asks what his mom is buried in. Raylan says Arlo is probably buried her in the cheapest piece of shit available, which, yeah, he probably would have done that. Arlo's Arlo, he probably would have done that. And the guy asks Raylan what he buried Arlo in, and he says the cheapest piece of shit available. And I thought that was kind of funny that he said that. I will say there was definitely some very funny lines in this episode. That's one of the things I am really loving about Justified the season, that it is very funny at times, and it can be very funny at times, which I really do like. So the guy, basically, Raylan says that he's moving the idea of his mother's remains, and says there may be nothing left but dirt if she was in a wooden casket, and he says it may be labor intensive. And Raylan says dig up dirt. If it's dirt, he's moving his mom to the town cemetery. And Raylan says he can stick his dad in Potter's Field, and Tim shows up and sees the burn mark from the footlocker and asks if it was a goat sacrifice. And Tim tells Raylan to go run down a suspicious character. He says no and says he has a lead on Zachariah Randolph, and Tim asks why no one in Harlan is named Steve or Justin, and Raylan says getting Boyd is and I like that Tim says that, because, yeah, the names on the show are very unique, and I think that was a very funny line, because I myself am like, Zachariah, that's such an uncommon name, but that's something I love that Justified does. They have such uncommon names. I mean, Raylan, Boyd, these are such uncommon names, and I love that Tim is like, why can't we just have someone named Steve or Justin? So I thought that was really funny. So Ava and Earl find Walker waiting in the house, and Boyd asks Zachariah how much he's trying to save him down for, and Zachariah says it's too dangerous. He asks, isn't he upset about Pig, because, Pig died and everything, but Boyd says he doesn't give a good shit about the man, and says Zachariah only knew for 5 minutes and doesn't care either. So Boyd tells Zachariah that's why he paid him $10K for the job, because he really doesn't care that Zachariah just pushed, Pig down. He doesn't really care. So Carl isn't happy with the conversation. Zachariah says he wants another 10K, and Boyd says he'll pay 5K, and Zachariah says they may switch to dynamite to get to the vault. So Walker has Ava tying up Earl and says to make it tight and perish the thought of him making a valiant escape. And again, Walker is very intimidating in this episode. I have to say, I love seeing Walker as this imitating villain. He's very intimidating, and it's great to see. So Walker says he also moved her shotgun and says she should know that he's not here to hurt her or Boyd either, and he says he'll explain why she should trust him while they wait on Boyd. And she stitches him up, and Raylan goes to see Zachariah, and I didn't know what Walker was going to tell her, but I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought he was going to say, like, basically that I'm against Boyd, but I'm not against you. I thought that's really what was going on there. But what he, of course, Walker doesn't know is that he's not working with Avery and Seabass anymore because, of course, Avery said in the last episode that we're not working with him anymore. So, of course, he is really in his own thing right now, and he needs allies. So I think that's really what this is all about, is that he wants allies and he's trying to gang allies. So Raylan goes to see Zachariah, and he asks if he remembers Dog Hole Mine in 1990, and he then asks if he remembers Boyd, and Zachariah says he knew Arlo but didn't want dealings with him or Raylan either, and Raylan asks what he has in the crate, but he doesn't want to show him. So Raylan asks what the rate is, and says he's a whore and wants to know how much Boyd is paying him. And Zachariah says this is not about money, it's not going to turn out the way he thinks it is. And Raylan tells him to move, and he says, make me. So Raylan does, punches the guy. I thought he was going to kill Zachariah. I'm going to be honest. I thought Zachariah was going to get in this episode. And because, we're focusing on him so much, I really thought that's what was going to happen here. There's dynamite in it, and he comes back out, and Zachariah punches him. Raylan gives it back, and they agree that it's done. I like that he didn't kill him because I want to see more of Zachariah's character. I think he's an interesting character, and I do like seeing his character. So Raylan offers him a hand up, and Zachariah asks if this is the end of the line. Raylan says he won't take him in and says he's in deep shit either way, and really he is. I mean, we know Zachariah is against Boyd and everything, and Raylan's against him, so I like that he said, you know what, I can't do anything to you because you're already in deep shit. So I like that he said that to him. So Mikey greets Katherine and asks for Win, and she then asks for ice, and Win chews Mikey up for not going to the dry cleaners. And Katherine says she doesn't have lawn and then has to go to play tennis with her asshole sister-in-law. So Win says he has proof that Avery is the rat because, of course, Katherine was very concerned about whether Avery was the rat or not, and he asks if she remembers Gordon Keith, and Win says his weapon of choice was a shotgun, and Katherine says that's how Simon Poole died and the feds are trying to put that on her, and he says Gordon was picked up shoplifting vodka and he doesn't even drink it, and he says Gordon made bail after her husband was killed in jail, and Win says that Gordon worked for Avery, and Avery's getting sick of the mess in Harlan. And Wynn says Boyd knows how urgent it is. And Katherine says if Boyd doesn't get in time, she can marry Avery and they take his money in a year or two. Which honestly is a pretty good plan. I mean, you take his money in a year or two, then that's actually a good idea. Because, I mean, that's really why she wants to be with Avery, is for money. Because Avery's, very rich. And she's not as rich. I mean, she's not poor, but she wants to be richer. And Wynn says that makes him a third wheel. She says it's to not be anxious, and says she's just thinking out loud. And Walker asks Ava if Boyd will go for his plan, and says if not, the two of them could go for it with Earl's help. And Walker flinches in pain while Ava stitches him and almost shoots Earl. I thought she was going to kill Earl there, but she doesn't. And Walker smirks and says Earl's pitiful life passed before his eyes, and Ava says she doesn't know if Boyd will agree, because as we know, Earl has a crush on Ava, and I thought in that scene Ava was just going to kill him because she was annoyed by him, but no, that's not what she does, and I like that she did that because I do like the sort of just, fun playfulness between Ava and Earl. It's fun to see, and I do like it. So they hear a noise outside. Walker goes to check it out. It's Boyd. He comes inside, pulls his gun, calling out for Ava. He asks where she's at. She comes out with a gun to her head and Walker's arm on her. He tells Boyd to calm down, says he's just there to talk, and Boyd says if he's really there just to talk to him, to put his gun down, because, Boyd doesn't really trust him, and Walker pushes Ava in front of him. And I have to say, Walker was legitimately frightening in this scene. Remember how frightening Boyd was last week? Well, Walker was like that this week, and Boyd punched him in the face, says he can't, everyone's punching people in the face this episode, I have to say. He says he can't believe he put his hands on his fiancée, and Ava tells Boyd to wait and says Walker knows the combination to the vault, and Walker tells Boyd his men are dead or in the wind, and says Avery can't have more men yet, and Boyd asks why Avery won't change the combination, and Walker says there's no one skilled enough in town to change it. So Boyd asks why he brought this deal to him. Walker says he can't make it out of town very easily since he doesn't know the hills around Harlan. and Walker says he's mostly trying to help himself. So he talks about how he risked his life coming here and it wasn't worth it, and Boyd says maybe he had made a deal to bring him to Avery to get back on his good side. And Walker says he either trusts him or he shoots him, which, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, you're either for me or you're against me. And every time Walker says just shoot me, I feel like he's going to commit suicide. But my thing is, he's so intimidating that I feel like he only says that because he knows people aren't going to shoot him. And he's trying to show that, look, I mean business here. I think that's really what he's trying to show there is that, look, I mean business. I know what I'm talking about, and you need to understand that. So Boyd says he will help him rob the vault since circumstances have changed, and Art comes to, so basically Boyd and Walker seem like they're going to work together. So Art comes to see Katherine at her request, and she says Avery called and told her some bad, wrinkled asshole Marshall was giving him grief, and she knew who he had to mean. And Katherine asks why he's so concerned who ratted at her husband way back when, and Art says he was recuperating from his gunshot, then heard about Avery, and then got his courtesy up. And she asks what he'll do with that snitch. He says he thinks the snitch may have shot Simon Poole, and Katherine says she also happens to be looking into Poole's killing, and says she thinks that person also killed Grady in prison because, she wants to know who killed Grady, and it was the rat that started this all. And he asks if she thinks it's Avery, and she asks what he thinks, and Katherine says she has to open a drawer, and he tells her to do it slowly. She hands him a file and asks if he knows who Gordon Keith is, and she gives him the file that Wynn gave her, and she says the man who shot Art changed his life, and of course, Gordon Keith is the man that shot him, and she asks what happened to him, and he says he got his balls shot off and got gunshot, and he says the man who ratted on Grady turned her life to shit and says she wants something like that to happen to him, and she tells him he can show himself out, and he takes the file and goes. So it seems like, basically she really does want to kill Avery, and as I said, I think that's what's going to happen, is that she's going to end up killing Avery. Because, I mean, people have said this, Avery, Walker, they're all going to be gone after, like, episode 10. They're not going to be on this show for that much longer. We have, like, 5 episodes left, and we need to focus more on Raylan and Boyd. Because of how this show is, they're going to get rid of them like that. I mean, think of what happened last season. Think of all the villains they got rid of last season. Yeah, they'll get rid of them very quickly. I don't think they're going to be on the show for that much longer. I mean, I'm not saying that they're not going to be threats, but I think that they're going to be gone probably, like, I'm thinking, like, what they should do is just kill them all in the penultimate episode, and then have the final episode just be Raylan versus Boyd, because that's really what it needs to come down to. So Raylan comes to find Avery and says he expects to find him with his back against a wall, and Raylan says he sees that he's down a few security people, and Avery points to a sign that says he can refuse service to him, and Raylan flashes his star and says kiss my ass, and he pours a drink and says if he helps him get Walker, he can have his land, and Raylan says if he gets Walker, he gets Boyd, and he asks Avery who's he's expecting to walk in that door. And Raylan tells him that Boyd told all the people in Harlan that if they sold to Avery, he'd kill them. And Raylan says he may be worried Walker would talk and flip on him, but he says he can't imagine Walker would give up without a fight, which he probably wouldn't. I mean, he put up a fight, and I think he'd do some damage to Avery, but let's face it, Walker, as intimidating as he is, he's nothing against Avery. I mean, Avery's so much more intimidating. Just hearing Avery speak is intimidating. Walker is intimidating in a different way. Walker's intimidating in the sense of how he says things. Avery's intimidating just by looking at him. So, would Walker last a chance with Avery? No. Walker would die in a second. If Avery and him were in a fight, Walker would die. It's that simple. So Raylan asks him what's the one thing no shit apple redneck can resist, and Avery goes down to a local radio show. And Raylan calls Tim and says he decided to help run down Walker, and he tells him to turn on AM 1194. And Tim tells everyone to be quiet because they're playing Raylan's song, and Avery says there's Tim is so funny in this episode. He's such an asshole to Raylan, but he's so funny, and I love that about Tim. And Avery says there's a manhunt on, and he's offering a 100K cash reward to anyone who brings in the fugitive Ty Walker. And Tim says Jesus Christ, and Raylan says you're welcome. So basically now we're kind of like on this mission manhunt now for Walker, and I really do like that. I like where that's heading because, I mean, Walker thinks he's so powerful, but he's nothing against Avery. And especially now that they're working together, I never thought that they'd work together, but of course, here's what I think's going to happen, is that they'll bring in Walker, and then Avery will die. Okay, I think Avery's going to die. I don't think Avery's going to stay on the show that long. If he does, if anyone from the show, if any of the secondary villains do stay on the show, it's going to be Avery. But Walker's dying. I'm calling that now. I mean, Seabass is dying. They're dying. And I think Katherine, honestly, is probably going to die as well. I don't see Katherine living. But Katherine could kill Avery. Who knows? I mean, if Katherine does stay, maybe she'll kill Avery. Maybe that'd be the best thing to happen, but I don't know. So Boyd fixes Walker a drink and asks if he's sensitive to odors. They offer him a ride with a guy who hides pot and pig shit that they then mention Groves, who isn't a local guy, but could get him over the mountain. And Walker says they just drive up, walk into the pizza portal, and Boyd says the marshals are sitting on it, and Walker suggests they call him a tip that he's been seen across town. And Boyd tells Ava that if she sends that text, Raylan will take the marshals and go, and Ava says she can pull that trigger once. And Earl warns Boyd that a car is coming, and Earl says it's the marshal that grabbed his nuts, and Walker curses, then goes to hide, and we get this really awesome Boyd-Raylan confrontation. I've been loving these confrontations, and we see another one this episode. So Raylan asks if Boyd even knows when he's lying anymore, if it's like blinking, and Raylan asks where his balls are at, and he asks if Boyd is going to pull off the job or bore his balls off, and he says he's tired of waiting and the BS, and Raylan says he has nothing trying him to Kentucky, and that's him, and Boyd asks if he wants to lean in for a kiss, because, I mean, I love that Boyd said that. That was really funny. Raylan says it's like the classic story where the hero gets his man, and Boyd says maybe it's another classic where a man chases a whale that ends the earth and drowns for his trouble. And Ava comes out and invites Raylan in for a drink and says nothing to hide. He comes in, Ava reassures Raylan everything is fine. Raylan says he has to find Walker and also came to help Boyd find his balls. And I love that he kept referencing Boyd's balls. It's so funny. And he tells him there's a 100K reward for Walker being offered by Avery. Now, I thought this was a really cool plan overall, because, I mean, what they're going to do is they're going to make it seem like Walker's a threat, and they're going to get Walker, but then they're going to get Avery, and eventually they'll get Boyd. I mean, that's really their essential plan here, because Boyd, of course, is the main target, so Ava's not their CI for nothing. She's their CI, of course, to take down Boyd, and I don't think Boyd realizes that yet. I don't think that he realizes yet. And he says every turd with a gun will be combing the woods with dollar signs in his eyes, and Boyd says he's in the back. Raylan goes for him. Walker knocked out Earl, fires at Raylan outside. Raylan shoots him twice in the back. Walker complains he shot him in the back, and Raylan says if he wants to be shot in the front, he should have him run towards him. Wheezes out a last breath, and I thought that Walker was going to die. I don't know if Walker's dead. I don't think he's dead, but we'll see. I don't think Walker's dead, because, I mean, I just don't think he's dead. I mean, he shot him in the back. I think he's definitely going to be... I mean, think of all the stuff that he just survived. We saw the gruesome scene last week. He's probably going to live. I'm just assuming it now. He's probably going to live. So the marshals are all over the property. Boyd's lawyer's there. He says his clients were in fear for their lives and were trying to find a way to contact the authorities when he showed up. And Raylan says all good lawyers have ponytails and then tells Boyd he should collect his reward money. And Boyd asks what's the catch. And Raylan says there is no catch. He raises his hand and says, oh, my mama's grave, which of course is no longer there. So you can tell that Raylan is basically essentially screwing him over. He takes Boyd to see Avery about the reward. He asks if he's joking, and Raylan says it's not important who gets the reward, but that a dangerous man is off the streets, and Avery takes them down to the vault and opens it, and both Raylan and Boyd eyeball the stacks of cash, and Zachariah is down below the vault. Avery hands Boyd some stacks of cash, relocks the vault, walks back upstairs. Zachariah lights the dynamite. Boyd asks if Raylan wanted him to see the stack of cash in the vault, and Raylan says he wanted him to get his reward. And Boyd tells him lying comes easy to both of them, and Raylan says that was a hell of a stack of cash, and Boyd asks if he really wants him to take that bait, and Raylan says he trembles with anticipation, and Raylan hears a rumbling sound, and he sees the water bottle and the liquid in it vibrating. So Boyd goes back to the bar, sends Earl home. Boyd tells Ava he has 100K cash and says it hurt Avery to hang it over. She says they have money and need to go, but he says he has something to show her first. And he shows her the stack of boxes, and says it's the size of the stacks of cash in Avery's vault. It has to be 10 million. And Ava says they're going to get killed, and Boyd asks what they're going to do with 100K, and she asks what they're going to do with 10 million. Which, I mean, that's a lot. That's enough to get her out of Harlan. That's enough to get them out of poverty. That's enough to become, like, very, very rich. So as good as that is, it's very dangerous as well. So Boyd says he can't walk away from it. Ava asks if he can ever walk away and says he has a choice here. She asks for her phone and says she has to meet Raylan. He hands it over. She asks if he's afraid she'll spit her guts and begs him to pull her out. And Boyd says he knows that Ava loves him, and even if she didn't, she knows what Boyd has to offer. So he says all Raylan can offer is a shitty job, which is pretty much true, and that's really what Raylan will give him. He asks how much money she'll get, and she says 50K. Raylan hands her 50K of the reward money and points to the stack of boxes and says there's 10 million, take your pick, and Ava heads out to Arlo's old place to meet Raylan. He asks how she got away, and she asks how he could give Boyd 100K when he only offered her 50K. And Raylan says it's a cheese in the trap. Now I knew there was more to this, and we see what it is here. He says it defies her understanding how she's scared but doesn't have a scratch, and he asked what happened in Bulletville, and I think he's really trying to show here that nothing bad's gonna happen to her because Boyd doesn't have the heart to hurt her. As we saw last week, there's nothing bad that's gonna happen. And I think he's just telling her, you know what, don't be afraid of Boyd. As scared as you are of him, don't be afraid of him because he wouldn't hurt you. And do I think he'd ever hurt Ava? No. I mean, he said to kill him when he thought that Ava and Raylan were having a relationship, having an affair, he literally said to Ava to put a bullet in his head, if you remember. So I like that Raylan said that because it is true that if it came down to that, Boyd would not kill her. He'd kill himself. That's really what would happen there. So she says they were hunting for him to go hunt a hog. She says his neck is just as red as hers. She says he's not better than where he came from and says he could have just been as easily been an outlaw. He asks again what happened in Bulletville, and she says she'll find out why they need Zachariah. And she says they're going through a busted mine in Blanton Creek, and Raylan asks why it's always a fight between them, and she says they're too much alike, and which is true. They're very much alike. I mean, think of their backgrounds, definitely. They both had very rough childhoods, and they're both just trying to be good people. Really, they are very similar. Braylon calls Rachel, says he doesn't know when, but how. He says he's going to blast up from underneath. He also says he's pretty sure Ava's burned, and she asks what tipped it. And he says he just knows. She tells him to come up in the morning and hash things out. He says there's something he needs to do first. And this last scene, very, very interesting. I don't know what this is trying to show. I think I know what this is trying to show, and I don't know if we're going in that route, but I think we kind of are. So Raylan goes out to his dad's shed, tries the key from the footlocker, walks inside and looks around. It looks like the entrance to a mine, and he says he sees nothing, and an apparition of Arlo is there. It was amazing to see Arlo again. I knew we were going to see Arlo again because they said we were going to, and I'm like, what? Well, we're seeing him in flashbacks. So of course Raylan would be thinking about him. And Raylan says he has nightmares his whole life about what Arlo had locked up in there. And Arlo says it's nothing. And he says Raylan always had his head in the clouds. And Arlo says it was just a place he used to go. And Raylan says he thought every evil thing inside his dad was in that place. And Arlo says it was a big fat nothing. Raylan leaves, slams the door, and Raylan tells the Mortician there's nothing left of his parents. He asks Raylan where he wants it moved to, and he says your guess is as good as mine. They start the backhoe digging, and the first to go is Raylan's grave, and there's a headstone there with his name on it and his date of birth. So I don't know if that's foreshadowing that he's gonna die, but that's really interesting. So overall, guys, this episode was definitely very good. Definitely a great episode. It wasn't the best episode of the season because last week's episode nothing's gonna top last week's episode. Last week's episode was amazing. Probably the best episode of the entire show. This episode was still great. I absolutely loved it. I've been loving this season. I haven't had a bad episode yet. And I really want to talk about some things. So is Boyd going to realize that Ava's against him? Because I don't think he realizes that right now. Is Walker dead? I don't think Walker's dead. We'll see what happens there. Is Katherine going to end up killing Avery? I feel like she's the only person that would actually be successful with killing Avery because she has a reason to. Plus, he has no idea she's working against him. So now if Walker is alive, there's definitely going to be a Walker-Avery showdown. And Avery's gonna, end up being the one alive, but Walker, he's gonna die. If he's not dead already, he's gonna die. It's that simple. If he's either dead or he's gonna get killed by Avery. So as far as Ava goes, I think Ava needs to really listen to what Raylan's saying because he actually does have some points. I understand that she loves him, but what Raylan's trying to do, she kind of needs to listen to him. Raylan and Avery, are they still working together? I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen between them. Do you think that last scene is foreshadowing Raylan's death? I definitely feel like that's what that's trying to show, and I think that's really interesting if that is what it's trying to show, because I think that's a very interesting concept, that it could be Raylan's death, and I just find that very interesting overall. But overall, guys, this episode was great as usual. Absolutely loved it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Also, with Zachariah, what are they going to really do with Zachariah? Of course, they need Zachariah, and Zachariah is against Boyd, so is he going to try to convince Boyd to do something? I just feel like all these people are going to convince Boyd to do something, and he's going to have no idea what's going on. If you think about Boyd's really the naive one right now. I mean, he knows what's going on with Raylan, but he doesn't know half the shit that's going on. He doesn't know anything about that and things, like that, but that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you guys saw this episode. Overall, guys, I thought this was a great episode. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for Pretty Little Liars. Yeah, as I told you guys, my reviews are out of order this week. I wanted to review Justified first, and I'm reviewing Pretty Little Liars tomorrow. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.